So we've been going through the book of Hebrews, which is like the, kind of the faith book. We went through Hebrews 11, where we read about all these amazing men and women who are, we lift up pretty high for their faith and their walk of faith. Abraham and Enoch and all these guys that some we know of and some we hardly don't. Others who were martyred and killed for their faith in Jesus Christ. And then here we are today, and we're going to celebrate those. But the author of Hebrews, in the beginning of Hebrews, kind of 1 through 10, really is showing, who Jesus Christ really is. He was greater than Abraham. He was greater than Moses. He was greater than anything and everything that ever came. And it was God in the flesh. And then he changes his tone, and what he's doing is he's trying to encourage these people that he's writing to. A lot of them were what we call Messianic Jews. They were Jews who turned to faith in Jesus Christ, who were being persecuted. These are also the best way to describe it, Hellenistic Jews. These were Greeks who turned to Judaism thinking they had to follow Jesus, but then they're learning about who Christ was. So they were Greeks who came to this faith in some of the confusion, but realized it was really in Jesus Christ, not in works, to be saved. And he's also talking to them. And then he gives these examples in Hebrews 11 about these other people who came and walked prior. And now we go into Hebrews 12, and the author kind of changes a little bit what he's writing, and he is writing, and it's actually a little bit of an admonishment, okay? This is part of like wake up church. You've made this commitment to Jesus Christ, but yet you're being tempted to pull back into whatever the world is telling you. You need to go to the temple. You need to do these offerings. You need to do all these ritual things and cleansing and stuff. And you're falling back into that because it's easy. It's what you know. It's familiar, because where God has been leading them has been very difficult. We read that some were persecuted and tried and even killed for their faith. And they're like, this isn't what I signed up for, and many times, I don't know if you've been like I have, like, God, why is this so hard? Why are you doing what you are doing? If you're God, my life should be easier, right? That is not found in scriptures, okay? Jesus Christ says, they hated me, they're going to hate you, right? So he kind of starts to admonish them a little bit, but as always, the word is also a huge encouragement. And we're going to read today about some of these admonishments that kind of hit home pretty hard with me. And I am going to tell you a story today that I have told in the past, and I told myself all week long I was not going to repeat myself because I do that a lot, and I want to stop doing that. But last night I woke up about 2 a.m, and I opened my Bible and I read some things, and I thought, no, I'm going to say it one more time at least, because it's so critical for a word picture, because that's how I think. I don't know how I learn things. I always have to put a visual in my mind. So you have to bear with me. Those of you who've already heard this story that I'm going to share one more time, but we will go through this. So we are in Hebrews 12, verse 1, and we're going to pick up right after Hebrews 11, where the Word of God says in verse 39 in Hebrews 11, these were all commended for their faith, meaning all of these who had gone on before us. Yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. In other words, what he's saying, all of these men and women who've gone on before, right? They had their time. They lived their life of faith, not seeing the fulfillment of what was promised to them. And God says, that was my plan. Not to give them complete fulfillment, because since God had planned something better for us, those coming after, that only together, us with our forefathers, thus with those who made the examples for us, that only together with us would they be made perfect. In other words, what they lived for come to fruition. All right? And I will tell you this, that God's plans will not be thwarted by any way, shape, or form. Anything going on in the world, God is in control. He is sovereign, and nothing happens that doesn't come through him first, whether we like it or not. But we're going to read today also why. All right? So with that, as we've already prayed, we're just going to pray that we can hear what the Spirit has to say, and then we can start to apply it in our own lives. So Hebrews 12, verse 1, the main point of this part of the message is run your race fixed on Jesus. Run your race fixed on Jesus. So verse 1, therefore, every time you read therefore, what's the therefore? Therefore, it precedes it with what's just been said. Because only together with us would they be made perfect. So therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. We're going to pause right there at the end of verse 3. We could speak all day just on these few verses, but we won't, because we're going to move a little bit through this so we can understand the bigger message of Hebrews. But run your race fixed on Jesus. So what's going on? He is given an analogy of what his message really means. And since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, my first note here is that we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. So what does that mean? Does that mean those that have gone on before us are sitting down looking at everything that we're doing and what's going on? I don't believe it's that way, although some of the commentaries you read kind of argue maybe a little bit of that. I don't believe it. And the reason why I say that is because there are those that have gone on before us who have yet to realize the full extent of what heaven is. I mean, they're in the presence of God, right? Think about that. Our loved ones are in the presence of God who've gone on before us, sovereign God in control. You know, I think about my mom who she passed away several years ago now, who at the end of her life, before she got sick and cancer, I remember she said a prayer, Lord, whatever it takes, I want to see my husband to be saved, right? Well, my mom comes down with pancreatic cancer. I am not saying God gave cancer to my mom so that my dad would become saved, but through that hardship, okay, my dad did come to a faith in Christ, right? And I remember as she was in her bed, one of the very last conversations I had with her, and she says, now that I have the husband that I've always wanted, God can heal me because, you know, I have grandkids that are going to be born. I have a daughter, you know, all these things that she was looking forward to, right, that she knew was going to happen. He goes, God can heal me now, you know, because I don't want to, quote, miss out on what's going on in their lives. And, you know, and I'm like, that's beautiful, Mom, but I think you're a little bit wrong in this. She says, what do you mean? I said, Mom, you are going to be in the presence of God. You are going to look back and you are going to be in his sovereign and just see who he is and everything all of heaven is. You know what's going to happen? She says, what? I go, the peace is going to overwhelm you like you've never experienced before in your entire life. And the reason why you're going to have that peace is you are going to know everyone as God knows them. As your children who are going to be born, grandchildren are going to be born, as your other children as they grow up, you are already going to see them as the finished thing, as God sees those who've come to know him, right? Because, and you don't have to go through all of the mud that we have to walk through. You know, all of the bad decisions that, you know, like even that I make or my kids, why are they doing that? I don't know. But you get to see the end result and you get to rest. And then one day, when we follow behind you, it's going to be this huge rejoicing. And you know, and the last thing she told me was, Breck, you brought me so much peace. And it wasn't me, it was the Spirit. I don't know where that, didn't have that all pre-programmed to say or anything like that. But I really believe, so this cloud of witnesses we have, it's their life they lived here on earth, the work that they have done, the witness, the mentoring that they did, that isn't complete. That's kind of their witness, right? But I don't believe that they're up there watching our every move. Oh, don't do that. Oh, this, or rejoice like this. So there's a little bit of awareness, yes, because we can get all kinds of eschatology and time things here and thereafter. Every tear gets wiped away after Christ comes back and things. So we don't have a complete understanding of all this, but I just think, I don't think they're here watching our every move, all right? Again, because they're in the presence of God, they know he has it. And they can see his stirrings and his movings, and there is joy, right, up there. There's all of these great things that are going on. So we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And I wrote down here, we are in the same race started by others, right? My mom started running that race when she came to Christ. And she brought her family and even her husband along with it, right? My mom's race was finished. My dad's race, he finished at finish line. His race was finished, right? We're still running though. Many of us have others that have gone on ahead, right? And some of all those that went on ahead with us gave us great examples to follow. Others, not so great, right? But God is still sovereign. But he goes on here and writes a little bit more. He goes, therefore, we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. So how are we to run our race? How are we to run? Well, with no hindrances. And what's the hindrance they have down there? It's described as a weight, as something heavy to carry along. You know, my daughter is out in Bend, Oregon. She's an outdoor model thing and does stuff for all these different athletic brands and things. And she likes to run, and she posts all these running things, but she can't just run like normal people. She has to wear this big weighted vest, you know, because, you know, she's trying to sell those for companies. And I don't know why you want to run with extra weight, because here a year or two ago, I decided I was going to run a 5K. And I thought, okay, I can do this. Did I do a lot of prep work? No, because, you know, nobody who wants to run anyway. Anyway, I decided I'm going to run with my 8-year-old grandson because I can take him. He's 8. The problem was as we started running, and he had a whole lot of energy, and as we were running, he was running, him and his friend were running circles around me just to prove that I was going slow, you know. And if I could have caught him, I would have kicked him and stomped on him and then kept running, right? But we made it through the 5K. But in the morning, it was kind of cold, so I had some like sweatpants on and stuff, but I was hot. And I thought, after running about what seemed like a mile, it might have been a block, I was hot, and I stopped and threw those pants off. You know, I had shorts on. I mean, I wanted to get rid of this stuff because I was so uncomfortable, right? That's just what this is saying. It goes, we run with no hindrances. The weight, we throw it off. But it talks about everything and the sin that easily entangles. So the sin. You know, you want something that ties you back and ties you down, that you're not just running with extra sweatpants. You're running with an anchor that's digging into the dirt and dragging behind. Well, everybody seems to be passing you up. What is that? This is those unconfessed sins. Those are those strongholds that we've left the devil. I don't believe a believer, the son or daughter of God, in any way, shape, or form can be possessed by anything demonic, but they can be influenced by it because of strongholds that we've allowed the devil to have. That's unconfessed sin. You know how to cut that anchor, that chain? It takes an absolute instant, and confess it to the Lord. God, will you please forgive me for this? And there's one other thing we can do. Breck, I've said that prayer so many times. And when I was in a church previously, when we came to the Lord, we were supposed to repent, right? It was a process. Don't get me wrong, but there's one thing they did that I really did appreciate is sometimes we had to go back and if we could make something right, we could. So we would go back to a person that maybe we wronged. You know, I told you the story about when my mom's car that I took that I wasn't supposed to take, and out in the snow, and we were doing donuts, having a great time in a Ford Granada, as much fun as you could have in one of those. If you know what that car is, horrible car. Anyway, I wrecked it, right? And I didn't, you know, after my dad said, don't take the car, and I'm like, I know better than Dad. Anyway, I took it. But the problem was when I dropped my buddy off at his house, going home thinking about how my dad is just going to, my life is ended, right? I backed in to an older gentleman I knew really well, backed into his car and dented it a little bit in the front fender. And did I go knock on his door at 10 o'clock at night? No, I put that thing in gear and I took off, you know. And that bothered me for, Mike Zimmerman is his name, and that bothered me for a super long time. Finally, when I did come to Christ and came to the Lord, we were at church one Sunday, and the church had a morning service, afternoon service, and we'd sit down at lunch. And Mike was there, and of course there's this stool right next to him, and I'm standing there and thinking, oh, okay, I'll sit down by him. Sat down, hey Mike, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. You know, he's a contractor guy, good guy. And he said, hey, I got to tell you something. He goes, what's that? And I go, you know, about a year ago, you had this car. I knew he repainted it himself. And I said, I backed into the front fender. He goes, oh, I know. I go, what do you mean you know? He goes, I watched you do it through the window that night. I go, what? He goes, I knew, but someday I just hoped you would come and talk to me about it. I go, are you serious? And he goes, yeah, were you tormented any by it? And I said, yes. And he goes, good, because that's what I pray. God, don't let him get away with this, but I'm going to let you deal with it. And he did. And he said, Breck, all I had to do in the morning is I went out and popped the hood and took the inside fender off. All he had to do. And I just pushed it back out, and everything was fine. You couldn't tell it. Everything was wrong. But I was the one that carried that with me for so long. And it was funny, after I, yes, Lord, forgive me, God forgave me, but after I talked to Mike, you want to know something? That weight was just gone. And now when I think about it, I can sit here and I can tell you these stories, but I don't feel, I feel bad, but I don't, there's nothing behind it anymore, right? The devil can't come to me and say, Breck, you're still carrying this, So the stronghold is gone. It's how we start to throw off these weights. But what does the devil do? He does not want you, he wants to keep you anchored and tied down. Not that he can have you anymore, but he can stop you from being what? Effective. And he can throw all this stuff at you constantly. And let me tell you, he's really, really good at it. And my fear of going to Mike to talk to him, which turned out to be a great conversation, I would have never had that blessing had I thought in my mind, I'm just going to sit and I'm going to eat this donut or sandwich and get out of here. Believe me, that thought went through my mind. There's the sin that easily entangles. There's also everything else, it tells us. What's everything else? That's the stuff. So there's a story about a lady who went to her pastor, and she had a dream that night. And she goes, Pastor, I'm so worried. He goes, I had a dream that the rapture came, and we were all taken up to heaven, and I was flying up there, and it was amazing. And then this rope caught my ankle, and I hit the end, and everybody else kind of went up, and I couldn't go because I was anchored. And then I woke up. She says, what does that dream mean? What is that? And he goes, well, I'm not going to tell you that I know exactly what it means, but it was, I guess this is a lady of some means and stuff. So that means maybe what God is telling you is you're anchored to a lot of things here on this earth. And you need to just let go of that stuff. Because you think you are owning it and you are controlling it, but it's controlling you. Now what you do with that is up to you. Some of us are the same way. Lord, I want to work for this retirement. I want to work for this relationship. I want to work for these. And Lord, I will follow you, but only once I have this. You do this for me, then I will do this for you, is really what we're saying. That's an anchor. That's something that entangles us, right? And the author, again, of Hebrews in his admonishment is saying, you guys are walking around still with some sin. And you're walking around with your cares and concerns of this world. And it is preventing you because you're trying to run this race and you're weighted down. And you're not going to make it very far. But it also tells us, and he goes on, he goes, throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. So perseverance, what's he telling us? It's really pretty simple. We need to stay the course. Because I don't know about you, but when things get difficult, sometimes I want to pout. Why is this everybody being so mean to me? Or I want to get angry and throw my little fits that I can throw sometimes, or whatever. Or I just want to quit. I can't tell you when there's a little bit of the real estate development we've done, I like to get things started and it gets really hard. I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? I'm just going to just get rid of all this and just quit, Then you get a good night's rest, you get in the morning and you go again. You ever had those kind of little bit of those roller coasters? But he goes, you need perseverance. Stay the course. Why? Because God says this, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. God has a plan. He has a way. The race we are running is not just some random thing out in the woods or out in whatever running. It is a course. There are markers. There is a destination and a point to the end. You need to persevere sometimes. Quit your whining. The way I read this in my own mind, quit whining and keep running. Yeah, you're tired. You're wore out. But quit running in your own strength and run in my strength. And we're going to get a little bit more to that. But he goes on, and he says this, and this is what really woke me up at 2 a.m. Fixing your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. You know, when we run our race and our course, staying with that same analogy, and we're running around, what do we want to do? I don't know, when I have run, I'm always looking down in front of me, where my foot's going to land. I did one of those mud runs one time years ago. Thought, oh, that'd be fun. That's a lie. Anyway, but you really wanted to make sure you're landing with your foot in the right place. Jesus Christ says, when you run this race, you look to me. We've talked about, and I said this, we quit looking at our circumstances all around us and we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. Well, Breck, I don't know where my foot is going to land. God says this, I direct the steps of a righteous person as they walk. In Jesus Christ, he is our firm foundation. Your foot is not going to slip. It's throughout the Bible. It's in the book of Isaiah. It's all the way through. God has us. Our problem is when we start looking at our circumstances in our race, we think, wait a minute, this is my path, but if I just run a little bit over here, I can avoid some of this. You know what God does? He goes, no, you're going to run a little bit of a loop, and you're going to right back around to where you were. Because I'm teaching you something. Persevere, endure, get through this, right? You are right where you need to be. And Jesus Christ is our own example. He did the exact same thing. Did he try to circumvent the cross? No. He went right to it. How did he go through it? Because of the joy set before him. That's what threw me. And here's my story, and you all heard it. This has been 25, 28 years ago. It was about the cross-country meet. You can raise your hand if you already heard the story. That's okay. Cross-country meet out in literally the middle of nowhere. We had my son and 2 daughters were running. We drove 2 hours. I mean, in the middle of, this was before GPS. I was following the guy in front of me, thinking he knew where he was going, only to find out after an hour, he pulls over, I pull over, he goes, I'm not really sure where this golf course thing is, so but I think it could be up here. And I'm like, well, I don't have any idea where I am, so I'm just following you. After 2.5 hours, we made it finally to the course. And it was like the state meet before the state meet. I forget how many of these little D3 college schools or high schools were there. My son was going to run in the JV team, and then the girls were going to run, and the varsity was going to run. And I remember getting there, it's all the line up, and my son runs in the JV meet. He was, I don't know, sophomore or something like that. And they all take off. I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to be there, although my kids are running. Beautiful Saturday, like what we're having now today. And I thought all these other things I could be doing, and now I got to drive home. Anyway, and so they took off running. And as they take off running, we're all standing on the course, didn't realize it, and the little, the race guy, whatever, says, hey, clear the path, because the runners are coming, so all had to back up, and everybody ran by, and when little Brimfield, Illinois, when our 6 members ran by, you're cheering for each one, go get them, go, and they run by, and they run out, and they got to run up this real steep fairway on this golf course, and then the brutal thing was they turned around, and they got to run down the other side of it, and they're all just flying, but the brutal part was at the end, they had to turn around and run back up it again. And then run out into the woods, and they came out later throughout the woods. So we're there watching them run up and down this course, and we're cheering what we can. All of a sudden, this race marshal comes back through. He goes, clear the course, a runner coming through. And I'm like, what? They're all way over there. What are you talking about? There's nobody through. And here comes this young man. And I don't want to say he was running, but he was all bent over and kind of hobbling and through and people were in the way. He was having to stop and run around people, but he had his bib on and his tag, and anyway, and he goes through, and everybody, get out of his way, and he runs. Well, the rest of the race happens, and all these kids come running through the woods, and it's this nice down path to the finish line you can see, and we're all there clapping and cheering, and here comes my son and other runners, all like, go, get him, go, and they're all finishing. It's great. Well, then they start to line up for the girls' race, where I had 2 girls running. And the timer is still running on the clock. And it goes 18 minutes, 19 minutes. And the parents are like, what are they doing? These girls are all lined up. They're ready to go. Let's get on with this day. 20 minutes, 22 minutes. I think it was like 2 point some miles. 23 minutes, all the way down to almost 28 minutes. And I'm there like, I don't know what's going on. Why can't these girls just run? And pretty soon the race marshal comes back through and says, clear the path. Runner coming through. Why am I so choked up? Here was this young man. He was so bent over. I mean, he was so soaked in sweat. I think you could have wrung it out of his shirt. And he comes out of this timber, and he literally runs right past me. I mean, I could smell him. And he's stumbling, half kind of just walking, running. And one mom beside me, and I don't know, she looks at this guy, she goes, hey, right there's the finish. Go, run. And pretty soon, she made enough commotion and cheering that these other people came running over, and other kids came running over, and they start clapping and cheering. And I was, right there's the finish. And finally, this young man kind of stops. I remember he kind of looks up, and he's all kind of half bent over, and he looks up, and he sees the finish line. At the end of the finish line was his entire team. And they were cheering him on. Here it is. Here we are. All these people rushed up to see what's going on. They lined the entire last 100 feet of this course. Everybody's cheering and clapping. And this young man stops and he looks around, and his mom goes again, go there. There's home. And he stands up and he runs. Not perfectly, but he runs. And he finishes that cross country finish line. And when he's done, what happened to his team? They picked him up, raised him up, and paraded him all the way through to where their team was camped. It was amazing. I didn't care anymore about the race coming up. The girls ran. You want to know something? When they ran and they came down, they ran by. You want to know what happened? These parents and team members who were just cheering for their team or their kid, you started cheering for everyone. Everybody was cheering for everyone. They ran up, they ran through, they come back, they come through and finish, and then the varsities run, and they did their whole thing. And at the end, they had to give out all the awards, and they're all sitting on this hillside. Last place team, and gets their little participation ribbon thing. And the place just roars up with everyone. And then another team comes. The place roars up. It didn't matter what place they were. It didn't matter anything. It mattered. This young man changed the day. This happened 20-some years ago. I remember everything about that day. I remember how the grass felt under my feet walking on the fairway versus a rough, all because of one man. We are encompassed by such a great cloud of witnesses who run before us. This is what the author's saying. There is a reward at the end of this race, this course that you are running, that you can't imagine. And right there's the finish line. Run. Run. Throw off everything that is hindering you. The sin that you're embarrassed to confess. Throw it off. The stuff that you have that is preventing you from doing what? From giving, from donating, from volunteering, whatever it is. Throw it away and run that race. Because you don't understand, that reward is beyond worth it. There is nothing in this life that it has to offer that is better than that reward at the end. Because we have a job to do. There are people watching us. There are people that are going to come after us that need to see and experience what God has done in our lives forward. And are we going to let something inhibit that? Some hardship? Some way? So we fix our eyes on Jesus, not the end. Remember, we run focusing on Jesus. He's the one that's going to direct us on our race. So it says one other thing here. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Consideration. There's a big old fancy Greek word, analogizmai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It means to analyze. Is where our word analyze comes from. And it says consider. What is it to consider? It's to carefully think through, to calculate, right? To weigh and compare, or to deeply reflect or deliberate in our mind. It is to consider. What are we to consider? This is not a casual thought. It says, consider him who endured such opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. We are to think about Jesus Christ and what he went through. You think what we're facing is difficult? Jesus Christ was still fully man, yet fully God. Came down from heaven in his glory to be ridiculed, spit upon, beaten, lied to, cheated from, talked about. All of these things. If we're focusing on him and considering what he went through, endured, that he persevered through because of the joy set before him, we can follow his example, right? So there's some practical points to this. The practical meaning of all this story. Study Jesus' endurance. Measure your struggle against him, and let that reflection strengthen your resolve for whatever it is you're going through right now. Because if you do that, what are the results? You will not grow weary, and you will not lose heart. You're running a race right now that's tough. Maybe you want to quit, and you want to give up, and you're questioning everything of value that God has done in and through you. It says we're not focusing on Jesus. We've grown weary, and we're losing some heart. You know how to gain that back? You should just come to Christ. Pray, ask. But the author even has more. So the question is, how about you? Are you feeling overwhelmed and worn out? So I wrote down, don't just push through. That if you hear that, what I'm saying, you're hearing it wrong. Don't just push through. We have to reframe our thinking. Sometimes the battle's right here, it's in our mind. It's a bigger battle right up here than it is in our circumstances that we're facing. The battle's in our mind, not our circumstances. Fix our eyes on Jesus. Because once we do that, we're ready for the next section. And what is the next point? Be trained by hardships as a child. Be trained as hardships as a child. And this is the difficult part of this message. Verse 4 through 11, we're going to read. God disciplines his children is the title. In your struggle against sin, against this casting away, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you completely forgotten his word about encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, my son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the ones he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate. Not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of the spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. We'll pause right there. Be trained by hardships. What's it first tells us? It tells us this, that we are to endure hardships as discipline. You know this thing you're going through right now, this circumstance, it's pretty much unbearable. We need to persevere through it and endure it. Why? Because God's using it as discipline. There's something in our lives that God is working in and through us, and we may not understand. We may say, Lord, this hurts, but it hurts a little too much. I can't bear it anymore. And I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm hurt, I'm depressed, I'm this. And God says, these are things I'm working in your life. Do you think it hurts you? It hurts me as well. Because when we suffer, God suffers. His love is so great for us. But he understands that the discipline needed is needed for what's coming next. You know, I was with some of our kids the other night, and they were saying, Dad, you spanked me for this and you spanked me for that. I said, I don't remember any of that stuff. I think your memory's skewed, right? You know, as a dad, I did not rejoice spanking any of my kids. And it made it sound like I just beat them black and blue. And I'm, you know, especially our younger one, who I remember her as a little girl, you know, when I would give her a swat because she was the baby, it'd be like, you know, stop it, you know, and that's not how it all was. I said, your memory's not good, you know, but that's how it felt to me anyway. But I didn't enjoy that, right? But I knew if I didn't, they would what? They would continue in their behavior, which was no good. You know, now I'm not a proponent here to start beating your kids. Don't hear that. But sometimes discipline is hard. But what he's saying is endure hardships as discipline. The Greek word for endure here is hypomeno, which means this: to remain under well. We're going through a hard thing. We're being disciplined. We don't understand it. We want to gripe. We want to complain. We want to moan. We groan. We want to do all these things, right? That's not what he's saying. He goes, you remain under, you endure well. Because you are being taught something. And if you're like me, we call it the school of hard knocks, right? I'm pretty stubborn. And unfortunately, I got to learn things the hard way, sometimes a few times before it finally sinks in through this thick skull. And I will tell you now, no discipline in the time is fun, right? But he goes on and he says this: not only do we endure, we should submit to the Father of spirits and live. We have a choice. When God disciplines us and he brings us in these hard circumstances that we don't like, that we don't enjoy, we have a choice. We can remain under well, or we can't. We can choose. We can go out and we can gripe and moan and complain and get angry at everybody else and everything else. And this is what's kind of bad, and we've all done this. I know I have. Sometimes when I want to gripe and complain because I'm going under this difficult circumstance that I don't believe the Father, if he really would allow things through him, that he would allow to happen to me. So I'm having all these things, and what do? I go home and I'll take it out on who? The ones I love the most. Because they're there, and they'll bear with it. That's exactly the wrong thing to do. God says you are to remain under well, focusing on Jesus. God, this hurts, this is painful, I don't want to react this way. Give me the grace to understand what you're trying to do in me, right? You know, I read an interview of Clint Eastwood years ago. When he would get all upset with stuff, he'd go out on the interstate and just scream profanities at all the cars going by. You know, I thought, if Clint Eastwood was screaming profanities at me while I'm driving a car, I would probably stop just to get his autograph, But because he goes, it had to, and he said this, it had to come out somewhere in me, but I didn't want to take it home to my family. And I thought, well, okay, Clint Eastwood, I just thought he would shoot everybody, but now I don't go on the interstate and yell profanities. I go and mow my lawn. I'm gonna get that grass. Anyway. We have a choice, but to submit to the Father and live. You know where the saying, live and learn? When things are bad, I guess, you got to live and learn, right? And I always talk about this. I'm tired of learning, I just want to live a little, But God says, in order to have the life you want, you've got to learn. And sometimes I'm going to discipline you because I love you, so that you do not continue down the path you're going, because I have a different path and you're trying to run over here in the wilderness, and I'm bringing you back, right? But our discipline, you have to remember this, our discipline is only for our good. It is not to hurt us and harm us. And it says we have fathers that disciplined us, earthly fathers, and sometimes as an earthly father, I disciplined my kids at times out of anger because I was so frustrated, right? God doesn't do that. He disciplines for our good. And he is patient. He knows what perseverance is. He knows how to endure through it as a parent. And let me tell you, because he sees us how? As we've already come through the finish line. That's his goal. His ways are above our ways. His thoughts are above our thoughts, right? We can't sometimes figure it out. That's why we live by faith, trusting in the one who is faithful. So here's the how about you question that I wrote. Sometimes I write these to myself, but most of the time I do. Is life fair? I've said it myself, this isn't fair. God doesn't care about fairness. He cares about you. We got to quit playing the comparison game. God is working uniquely in you for the purpose and the race he has designed for you. And it's good. That doesn't mean everything is good that we go through, but it's for our good. And I remember one time, Janie and I were at a dinner at a couple's house, she had lost her first husband. They were remarried, and she goes, Breck, God taught me some things through some excruciating experiences. I think they even lost a child that I never want to go through again, ever. And I would never want anyone to go through it. And I would never give a nickel to go through that experience again. But you could not give me $1 million for what I learned going through it. Because I know I'm a better person, and now I'm on the backside of these horrific things I had to go through. I see where God had his hand in it. And he has used that to bring me to the point where I am today. And she was a huge encourager, just a huge encourager in the church I was at. And I really think that I wrote that down in my notes. 5 cents versus 1 million is what I wrote in mine. And I've used that saying a lot. I'm not going to give a nickel to go through that again, but I'm keeping the lesson, and I'm going to apply it. And point 3, the very last verse that we're going to go through today, is allow Christ to strengthen you. Verse 12, therefore, because of the cloud of witnesses, because God loves you enough to discipline you, therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees, make level the paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. What does he mean by that? So it's therefore, because of the discipline that we just went through, because of this hard circumstance we have gotten through. Remember, I will say this, that discipline and hard circumstances are only a season, okay? It is not, even when you think this is never going to end, it is only a season of time. So therefore, 1, strengthen your feeble arms. Have you ever felt so wearied by the circumstances you're in that you've just got no strength left? I cannot face another day. You ever had that? I've had that. Fatigue or the weariness of doing good. Does really what I'm doing even matter? Remember that cloud of witnesses? Yes, it matters. Strengthen your feeble arms. Strengthen your weak knees. How about instability? I'll never forget this, and I said this is a day of repeat stories. I told my wife we were going through one of our most difficult times where I thought I was losing everything. I said, instability, I said, I have nowhere to step. I can't step forward, meaning the business I had, I thought they were going to foreclose on, and I was going to lose everything. I can't step back because there's nothing to step back to. I can't stay where I'm at because it's just crumbling underneath my feet, and I have nowhere to stand. And my wife said this, and I'll never forget it. She was supposed to hug me and say, I'm with you, everything's going to be fine, and we're going to have that little just sweet moment. She looked at me like this and says, it's about time you realize that. And the only place you can stand is on Jesus Christ. And then she turns around, walks away, and gets her cars and leaves. And I'm standing there, just a blubbering idiot, because I was feeling sorry for myself and all these other things. And I thought, you know what? I needed to hear that more than I needed a hug. And maybe you do too. What is weakness, weak knees, instability, fear or hesitation, or loss of confidence or courage? A real thing we've gone through here recently, I have in the restaurant realm, right? I've never done this before, right? Mondays historically are the worst day of the week, Mondays and Tuesdays for a restaurant. Well, we're happen to be open on Mondays, but we're closed on Tuesdays, and Mondays were horrible. And I thought, okay, Lord, I can't keep this place open if I'm losing money every Monday. Maybe I should do what? Just close on Mondays and be open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's an option. But I thought, wait a minute. There's a lot of places that are closed on Monday because of this. What else can I do? What else can I do? So I decided this out of the blue. We're going to make Monday night steak night. Sorry, this is not an advertisement to come, but you're going to come. No. And I'm going to do something to entice people to come in, and we're going to discount a nice meal to get people to come in, but maybe they'll buy a dessert or something else and we'll be all okay. And so Facebook just did one Facebook post. You know what happens on Monday nights now? It is our second busiest night of the week compared to Saturdays. Monday. Why? Because I could have just said, oh, I quit, I give up, we're just going to close and be done. But what else is it that we have that we can do? I prayed a prayer a long time ago, and I wasn't going to say this, but I will now, because of, and I've said this, Moses and his staff in his hand. Moses, you're going to lead 1 million people plus into the promised land while they're all captive. And he's like, he stuttered, who am I? How can I do this? And he goes, Moses, what do you have in your hands? What do you already have? And he says, well, I got this stick, right? That's all you need. There's this stick. Could you imagine being Moses just for a minute? The guy who left Pharaoh, ran out in the wilderness for 40 years, and he meets this God, and he says, you're going to lead all of these people, and you only need a stick. And he's like, you may be God, but are you really that big of a God? He goes, just watch. You throw it on the ground. And it becomes a viperous snake. And Moses freaks out. He goes, now pick it up. He's like, snake? I'm not picking up a snake. Pick it up. And he picks up and goes back to a stick. Now, who are you going to believe? What man is telling you? What your mind is telling you? Or are you going to keep your eyes focused on me and watch what I do with the impossible? With man, it is impossible. But with God, you have more than what you need to face whatever it is you're facing, whatever you're going through. It is by God and his strength. So what are we supposed to do with this? We're supposed to make level paths for our feet. Like these examples I just said, you were to do this. I wrote this in my own words. Get up and go again. Quit feeling sorry for yourself. Quit saying, oh my, oh this, whatever. God has equipped you. He has a path for you. He has a finished goal in line for you. Get up and let's run again. And if you're stumbling as you're running and you're bent over, let me tell you, there are others who will come right along beside you, not only cheer you on and help you on. That's what the church is for, right? But we're like, oh, God, I got to do this myself. No, you don't. It's the household of faith. That's why we have a church and a body that we can run together when we need it. So get up and go again. But what do we do when we get up and go again? We take the lessons we've learned from the discipline and we apply it today. I just told my wife the other day, I said, man, everything that I have learned in the last 10 years, I wish I knew before I started in business way back years ago, because it would have been a whole different story. I wouldn't have done this decision, that decision, right? And understand this, and I've said this a million times, and that one I will say again, regret looks back, right? Worry looks around, but hope looks to the future. And I hope what you heard in this message today is simply this. It's time we start looking with hope. Not only at the future, but at the one who holds our future. And that is Jesus Christ. So here's how about you? Have you hit the rock bottom and ready to quit? If that's where you are, then it's time to look at Jesus Christ. Gain his strength, right? Gain his wisdom, gain his direction. And he's going to do this no matter where we are in the course. He's going to pick us up and he's going to set us right back in the middle of the course where we need to be. And maybe you're like that young man running that race. You're running up a hill and you're just going to die. Or maybe you're coasting right now and you're running down the hill and you're gaining momentum. Things are going good. Let me tell you, there's a bend that's coming and we're going to learn from that. Or maybe you're just out in the wilderness and forgotten. No one cares. I'm all alone. Whatever it is, family's abandoned you, whatever it is, and you're running in this wilderness. Well, let me tell you something. There's the finish line is right there. It's within sight. Our life is a vapor, right? And there are those that are not only going to cheer you on, that are going to help you. Call out to God. Ask him for forgiveness. You have not because you ask not. Start asking and live this life of open hands. Get rid of the things that are dragging behind so you can run free and fast.